So when do I get my award? It's Romania Black. I'm Mahito again. Are you surprised? But I have to be because Mahito is like 0 for 2. This is the only way I can cope. This is cranberry juice, not wine, because I've felt like this feels like such a Mahito moment. My coworker, whose office is right next to me, has had a cold the last few days, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not sick," as they're like just snotting everywhere. And so today I started feeling, that feeling when you know you're about to get a cold, and you're like, how dare you? And so this feels very appropriate. I'm in like my pre-cold Victorian era where it's just like the disease is there, but it's not settled in yet, and I'm trying to fight it. So I have cranberry juice, I've had soup. But it felt so appropriate because Mahito's a curse from human curses. So why not? But yes! We're on episode 20 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, episode 44 altogether, and I felt like Mahito was very appropriate. I'm in my lavish, give me my award. I've killed off 2 of the big characters of Jujutsu Kaisen. Isn't that wonderful? No, it's not. It's heartbreaking, but this is the only way I can cope, is by becoming the villain. It's the only way we can cope. So I'm here for the chaos. I'm here for all of that jazz this episode. I don't know what's going to happen with Mahito. I would assume Yuji's going to go crazy and fight Mahito, but as we've seen in this season before, things can happen that just completely derail where you think the plot is going. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with Yuji and Mahito this episode? Maybe there's like a slim chance that Mahito didn't kill off Nobara, but I mean, her eyes just kind of popped out, so what do we do about that? I have a lot of comments, so we might as well talk about those before we get started on this. This is actually one of my favorite wigs, so if I'm doing this the whole time, I love this wig. If I go to a convention, I would be Mahito. I think if I went to a convention and did Jujutsu Kaisen as a cosplay, I would either do Geto. I would be villains. I would either do Geto or Mahito or Sukuna. I think those are the 3 because they're my favorite wigs. I love the Geto wig. I love this wig, although it has little hairs everywhere and there's hairs getting all over my face, and I'm trying not to touch my face because I like how my makeup turned out, and I'm like, if I touch it, it's gonna smear it. So I would do that. But then I also like the Sukuna wig, the Yuji/Sukuna wig. So I would just be a villain. If I went to a convention, I would just be a villain if I did Jujutsu Kaisen. So, or Shoko, one of the 2. But Yartharai 4658 talked about how Nanami asking, "You're here, aren't you?" to Mahito was like him asking if he was at death's doorway. And I'm like, yes, Mahito is very much the harbinger of death these last 2 episodes. And I thought that was really, really chilling, the way he's like, "You're here, aren't you?" Like death has come to claim Nanami after all this time. Seppi brought up a really interesting point that Yuji recalling the voices in his head in episode 18 was similar to Geto running through all of the things in his head back during the flashback episodes. And I remember back when we were doing the flashback saying that Yuji and Geto would probably get along really well. And I'm like, yeah, there's definitely some similarities between Yuji and Geto at this point, especially with like survivor's guilt and dealing with losing people. And of course, at the time, Geto was wondering what is right and wrong. And that's the name of these last several episodes, right and wrong. My thing is, do I think that Yuji's going to follow down the same path as Geto? I don't think so. I think Geto was influenced by a lot more things to where he got to the point where he thought that killing the non-sorcerers was the way to go. I don't think Yuji's going to start killing non-sorcerers. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. But it is going to be interesting to see how Yuji reacts to this in comparison or contrast to Geto's reaction to losing Haibara, to losing Rika, like all of the, or Riko, all of those different things. So that's interesting. So thank you, Seppi, for pointing that out. There's a lot of discussions about Nanami's death and the idea of if it was proper or not and all that, so I'm going to come back to that. But Mid-Matt, as well as Anne, as well as a bunch of other people, pointed out that this blows my mind that the day episode 3 came out for season 1, the day we met Nobara, the chapter of the manga came out where she supposedly has died. Excuse me, Gege? What? That had to have been planned. That is like some Isayama numerology levels of explanation where Gege was just like, oh, I'm going to have this come out. That's why we had this big ass long flashback, because Gege wanted to time it just right to have that chapter come out when he knew the episode was going to air. Because you know Gege knew when that episode was airing, and he was like, well, we'll give the manga reader something to talk about. That is cruel. That is very cruel. How dare you, Gege? But thank you all for letting me know that. That just like mind-blowing. User FS3 pointed out something really important. I'm glad you said this, because I was racking my brain about what natural enemy meant, because Mahito made terms of it. I was like, what is that? And user FS3 pointed out that from season 1, Mahito explains that the natural enemy is someone that could actually kill Mahito. So normally if you just attack him physically, it doesn't do anything, because he can change the shape of his soul and the shape of his body. However, someone that can kill Mahito, we know that Yuji can, because Sukin is inside of him, and that's why Mahito's like, I don't really know if I can fight you head on. And somehow Mekamaru's simple domain has that effect on Mahito, so something's up with that, and Mekamaru could be something that could cause him harm. But Nobara was the third. And so that explains a lot from last episode why Mahito was not playing around. Mahito's like, oh, she could kill me. So if I take the time to merge back with myself into one being, it could give Yuji and Nobara enough time to tag team, and then it's 2-on-1, and both of them can kill me, and I don't want to risk that. So instead, I'm going to keep myself separated, swap places, get rid of her, and that way somebody that could do me harm is out of the equation. That's very smart on Mahito's planning. It's very smart of Gege on his planning. And I feel like it's a way for Gege as an author, looking at it from a narrative standpoint. If Gege, yeah, we can fantasize all we want what it would have been like if Yuji and Nobara had teamed up against Mahito. But the fact of the matter is, Gege's like, I don't want to write myself into a corner and then have to give this half-assed reason of why Mahito could stand up against two people that could kill him. Because we saw when Nobara and Yuji teamed up against the brothers, what happened there at the end of season 1. And I thought we were getting to that in this, and we didn't. So Gege's really smart. Gege's like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm smarter than that. I know not to write myself into a corner. So good on you, Gege, but damn, it sucks. So I thought that was really cool to point out. And then Pineapple 541. Thank you, Pineapple, because everybody has tried to explain the whole concept of Makora and how it works. And I'm like Ghetto sitting in the classroom with Gojo, and I just need someone to explain it to me in the concept of Pokemon or Digimon so that I can understand. And Pineapple 541 was like, okay, well, Megumi's 5 shadows, it's like Pokemon. He's got to beat them first, and then once he beats them down and defeats them, he can capture them, and then he can bring them out and use them whenever he wants. I'm like, it's like Pokemon. That is exactly the same. I needed you to Gojo style explain it to me like that, and I got it. So I was like, thank you. So if it's defeated after he brings it back out again, after he can control it, then I like that you can still contact the summon, but it doesn't manifest in a physical form. Like the dog, the one dog was destroyed, but it's still there. It's just now merged with the other dog to come out, but not in its own form. So Pineapple, you get bonus brownie points this week because you're doing the good work. You're explaining that in ways that I can understand it. So thank you. Anne talks about how until 20 to 30 years ago in Japan, schoolboys used black bags, which is why it was like that in the last episode, and girls used red. And so their comment was talking a lot about the old traditions in Japan, like the red rice when you have your first period, which even though it's an old tradition, it's still creepy. I'm sorry. And that's just me and my Western ass. So I'm sorry if I'm shaming your cultural tradition, but it's kind of weird. To me anyway. And Nobara just doesn't get the small town mentality, which I'm from a small town. I'm from an extremely rural community where everybody knows everyone. Everyone knows everyone's grandparent. When I grew up, I had 23 in my graduating class. So we all knew each other. We knew where each other lived. It was very much a very close-knit, small-minded community. Not everybody's small-minded, but it gets the reputation, right? So I definitely understand Nobara not liking that mentality and not liking that atmosphere. And then you have Sayori and her mom coming around, and they wanted to be a part of nature and the beautiful countryside, but they just were outsiders, and the community rejected them. and they just didn't fit in. And so it just didn't work out, right? Ray Quiggs pointed out that Kyoto to Japan is a 2-hour and 18-minute ride by train, which is not a very long ride. Again, when you grow up in a rural area, you have to go a long distance to go anywhere. Like the nearest town is like 20 minutes away. So it's just like 2 hours and 18 minutes seems like a long time. I'm like, oh God, that's a trip to the city down the road. Like, it doesn't feel like a long trip, right? I feel like in America, you're like long distance traveling is pretty normal, right? So that was interesting. And then, so we have this conversation between Carlu, Alexander Q, and as well as a few others. We're talking about Nanami's death. Was it proper? And we've had a lot of people comment about that. The idea of was it proper? Like, Nanami has had regrets during their death, which is problematic. But they didn't want to curse Yuji or anyone and have them be cursed in their death. And so Alexander Q pointed out, was it proper? He was exhausted and he had regrets, but he put on a brave face for Yuji. And my thing was, it was so that Yuji thought he had a proper death. Now, whether Nanami himself believes his death was proper or not, that's up for speculation. But the point of it being that maybe Yuji thought, oh, Nanami was able to die without regrets. He had a proper death. Now, whether Yuji believes that and it's true or not, those could be two different things. But I thought that was really interesting, right? I thought that was really interesting. And so then we have Carlu, who said basically, talking about Nanami's regrets, didn't want to curse Yuji. So it's a proper death, but Yaga says, what's interesting is that Yaga says that no sorcerer dies without regrets. But then you have Nobara, who's like, I had a good life. I don't have any regrets. It is what it is. So it kind of contradicts that statement. So it's very interesting. And I feel like it's cool that Gege leaves it up to us, the audience, to be like, did Nobara and Nanami have proper deaths? Who did they have proper deaths to? According to whom were their deaths proper? So I think that's really, really fascinating. And then finally, Carlu 3179 also says that they were explaining that basically, from what we know from season 1, if Yuji dies, the fingers die with him. So ideally, what the upper, echelon in Jujutsu Society wanted was for Yuji to get all 20 fingers, have them contain him as Sukuna, and then get rid of him, and then supposedly, seemingly, Sukuna would die. That was the goal, right? And what's interesting is that Yuji's like the first person to ever be able to control Sukuna while having ingested the fingers. And Brain-kun even notes that even if Yuji gets all 20, Sukuna is not guaranteed to take over entirely. Yuji could still control him. So it really puts the ball in Yuji's court of saying, okay, when you get all these fingers inside of you and you're able to control Sukuna, technically, are you going to kill yourself? Are you going to let somebody kill you? Or is that little bit of humanity in you going to want to keep living? And if that's the case and Yuji wants to stay alive, what do we do with that? And I think that's the big question from the last several episodes, is that Yuji, there's a part of him that wants to survive, that wants to keep fighting, that wants to keep going, but he's realizing that the longer he stays alive, the more people are in danger of him. So it creates this very trepidatious, like, tightrope of walking where you don't want Sukuna to take over, you don't want to die, but then you could be responsible for all these people dying because of having Sukuna inside of you, and what do you do about it? And it's just all these things. Just all of these things. So I thought that was rather interesting. So yeah, and then finally, Alessi Kali brought up Nobara and Yuji. They could have teamed up, but did Nobara have deaths if they died? If they died, I think that they're dead, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe this episode Nobara will be fine. She'll just put on an eye patch, everything will be all hunky-dory, and we'll just go from there. So yeah, I've talked enough. I've been stalling because this episode, I don't know where we're going to from here. Maybe Toji will show up. That's why I said last episode, maybe Toji will show up. They're the only person really missing from the OP that hasn't arrived. But we still have 20, 21, 22, and 23. We still have 4 episodes left, so it's all up in the air, right? But I feel like Toji will show up, but will he make a difference? We shall see. So, in any case, I hope y'all are excited. I'm ready for the chaos. Let's go! I feel like such a valley girl as Mahito. But we're going to start episode 20 of Jujutsu Kaisen, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, And let's do it to it, Lars. Well, that was a mixed bag of an episode. Am I right? We just ran the whole gambit, didn't we? We just ran the whole gambit of being like going from Mahito. God, I cannot gush enough about Mahito's voice actor and those opening 5 minutes. I was like, oh my God, like from Mahito going into his big dramatic monologue about curses versus humanity and why, and this is war and this is what we're doing. We'll talk about it on Whiteboard Kun. Like as the OP was playing, I was like, Whiteboard Kun was like inching closer and closer, and I was like, yes, you want to come so we can talk about it on Whiteboard Kun? Of course. And then we went from that to Todo showing up like just the biggest dick energy you've ever seen. and then we just go to Miwa and Mekamaru, and then ending it with Mahito's just deciding, screw it. Like, Mahito had very Megumi at the end of season 1 vibes, where they're just like, let's just go all out, Itadori. And it's like, oh my God. Honestly, I'm sure that the anime was following exactly beat for beat the way the manga was organized, but if it had been me directing this episode, I would have made a change, and I'm sure the manga purists would have been like, that's not how the manga did it, how dare you. But I think pacing-wise, what I would have done would have been up until the last part where Todo and Yuji like confront Mahito, and then everything explodes out. Whenever the souls multiplying exploded out of the bottom of Shibuya, like the roof, it just raised the roof and blew through the roof. The moment that they all like blew through the roof and they look like little hot dog fingers coming out. And then you see like Todo and Yuji looking down, and Mahito's just like, come at me, bro! Like, that moment there, I would have wanted to end the episode on that moment, because that's a great moment to end the episode on. But I would have sandwiched the moment that the fingers push out of Shibuya, the souls push out of Shibuya and like lift Yuji and Todo up in the air. I would have ended on that shot with Mahito, but before then, I would have moved the Miwa and Mekamaru conversation to the Edie playing over it. I think that, I know the silence, I'm kind of torn because I really like the quiet silence when it's Miwa and Mekamaru having their conversation. It's very romantic, and I'm like, why couldn't you just tell her that you loved her? And it's like, ah! But, because she's like, so don't say goodbye to me. But I feel like with the Edie, it would have tonally fit better than the fight, because the Edie is so beautiful and serene, and the fight with Mahito is just kind of like grungy and gross. So I feel like they could have moved that part pacing wise, and then had her crying and Momo being like, whoever makes my cute senior cry, I'm gonna beat up. Then have the roof caving up and then showing the ending of it. That would have been the only thing I would have moved in the episode to let it like have more impact, because I think the Edie with that moment of Mekamaru and Miwa would have been very beautiful and could have been really well done. But I'm not the art director. I'm not the person that gets the last say on it. Whatever. It's fine. So, this episode just had it all. It had romance, it had action, it had horror, it had Mappa making me cringe. I was just like, and cringe in a good way, right? So, Yuji though, the blood hitting his face and it connecting with the cup of coffee being spilled onto Gocho's nice shirt. My question is, I'm like, Ijichi, you are a terrible babysitter. You know why? These teenage kids are sitting around with their chips and coffee and everything, eating it up, just chatting it up, and you walk over and lay this $250,000 yen shirt on the table next to their food and shit, and you think they're not going to spill stuff on them? Ijichi. I'm with Nobara. The scales are tipping in Ijichi's favor, because he should have put that in a bag. He should have set it on top of the desk, not where those kids are sitting, and then let them deal with it. Come on now. And then, yeah, she knocks over the coffee. I like that Megumi has the tissues next to him. Like, did he have a cold or something? And then they're like, oh no. And I love Nobara. Nobara, her reaction is very much like what I'd be like, okay, let's think about this. Is it really my fault? You know, in another world, if Mahito wasn't a curse and was just like the diva that they could be, I could see Mahito and Nobara getting along and being like, I mean, let's be real. Right, where she's like, and then she's like, okay, there's Ichichi who left the 250 yen shirt with us, and then there's me. I want to know yen to dollar, and I've done this conversion so much, yen to USD. How much is that? So 250,000 yen. Oh, it's a $1,700 shirt. What? 250,000 yen is $1,747. Where are you shopping, Gojo? Did someone hand make that with spider silk? Where did you have that who sells a $1,700 silk white shirt? And also she was suggesting that they they each put in like $630 a piece. I'm like, girl, I don't know a lot of 15-year-olds that just have $700 just lying around ready to go, but and then Megumi's like, oh, is that a lot? I was like, are you Lucille Bluth? Do you think a banana costs $10? Like, who sells a $1,700 white press shirt? Like, Gojo, what fashion designers are you working for? What is it, from Louis Vuitton? Where are you getting these shirts from, sir? The bouginess of it. The bouginess. I'm like, oh my god, it's just a white shirt. Like, why it gotta be white? You know? I like that they even they just make the coffee even worse. I like as they're trying to dab it, Megumi's not even doing anything. He's just dabbing it. He's dabbing the part that's not even coffee stained. It's hilarious. And it just make it look like a piece of artwork. And she's like, well, we tried, but what do we do? And then, of course, they all freak out. And then Gojo shows up. And I like they tried to stuff the shirt in Megumi's. They tried to stuff it in Megumi's jacket. It makes him look like he has boobs. They all laugh like a bunch of 15-year-olds. And Gojo's just sitting there. And for a second, it's like you see it from Gojo's perspective. And it's all them just being kids and laughing. And it's like, I thought we were going to get a moment of like Gojo reacting to that. Because he'd have been like, oh, you kids, look at y'all. Look at y'all, you know. But no. Then we cut back to Yuji. And they just hard cut. From that moment to her, I like that Nina was like, I tried, but I make no promises. Because, like, half her brain looks like it just popped out with that eyeball. Yeah, she probably did. She don't have a pulse and she ain't breathing. She probably did. I don't know. How do I feel about if she does live? I don't know, because part of me, like the greedy part of me is like, oh, I want Nobara to live and get an eye patch and be a pirate the rest of her days. Part of me wants that. The other part of me is like, would that cheapen the death if she does die? I don't know. I feel like since Nobara didn't go out swinging like Nanami, I think I would be okay with her living. Nanami, he goes out like just with this beautiful crescendo and serenade of music, and it's just all this thematic beauty. And not to say Nobara's didn't have that, but with Nanami's, it felt very much like a final battle sort of scenario. And Nanami dying, if they brought him back to life, it would cheapen it, I think. Especially after this episode, what Yuji takes from that death and how he like internalizes Nanami and his saying to him, like, it's your turn now. One of those moments. Whereas with Nobara, she doesn't really have that same moment. So I think there's a 5% chance she lives. If that. I think it's very slim to nothing. I think Nita mainly says it so that Yuji will feel better. So that Yuji will feel like maybe there's a chance and there's hope. The thing out of it is that Nita gives him hope in that moment, and that's all Yuji needs at this moment. He just needs a sliver to hang on. But I think that that's going to get dashed by the end of this. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. So I don't know. But yeah, oh, it's awful. And just the idea of Yuji just being like, and then seeing like it's just him cut in half there against, I feel like Yuji just feels like he's been severed. Like he's lost Nanami, he's lost Nobara, he's lost two of the people he was closest to in this world. And it just feels like he's been cut in half. I love that representation of the flashback of him after Choso's battle and just, and then just the idea of everything, all the death and destruction that's been caused. And then you see Nanami again, and he just can't take it. And I love the way they animate Yuji in this moment, that he's just so distraught. And then, of course, you know, Mahito, you think Yuji's gonna be able to like dodge it and stuff, and you think, okay, well, he's either gonna have one of two reactions. He's either gonna like have a ultimate revenge, like the monster spirit Bleach style bubbles up from inside of him and he awakens this demon within Yuji, or he's gonna just crumble. And he does the more realistic reaction, which is he crumbles in that moment, right? And of course, my dogs are being like Mahito, little curses. I love Mahito being like, I truly am a curse. So that's the one thing about Mahito. Mahito revels in it. Mahito's like, I know I'm a curse. Isn't that just the best thing in the world? So let's talk about Mahito, because Mahito has some things to say. Mahito is like, I feel like Mahito could be a drag name. I feel like Mahito would be cutthroat on Drag Race. Let's be real. Mahito, poor whiteboard coon, showing its age, being all crickety. But yeah, Mahito is like, I'm such a curse. Get this on here. Poor whiteboard coon needs some oil, some WD-40 there. He's like, I'm such a curse. And he just waylays Yuji. Just hits him. And he says Black Flash. Now, when did Mahito be able to do a Black Flash? When did that happen? When was that possible? Whiteboard Coon, do you know? I didn't know curses could do Black Flashes, but he is a curse born from humanity, so I guess that makes sense. I guess if anybody's going to be able to do it, then Mahito would be the one, but that's absolutely terrifying. And he manages to hit poor Yuji, and Yuji's just, at this point, just done. Yuji's like, I don't know what to do now. And of course, Mahito, it's kind of this weird stalemate, because Mahito can't transform his soul, Yuji's, because he knows he'll awaken Sukuna, and Sukuna will be like, now, I told you once. So, at this point, it does become interesting to ask the question, and it does bear asking. Like, he's such a curse, and he's just torturing Yuji, right? He's torturing Yuji, but to what end? To what end does this serve, right? And this kind of goes back to all the theorizing we did last episode, being like, well, why in the world would we just be torturing Yuji at this point? Unless we're just trying to get Sukuna to come out and... But here's the thing, too. The thing about it is none of the curses really know that Yuji and Sukuna have already made a pact. They don't know that. They don't know, to our knowledge, that Sukuna and Yuji have made a pact. Yuji doesn't remember the pact, which is highly convenient for Sukuna. But the curses are all like Jogo was like, oh, you should make a pact with Yuji. And so that leads me to believe that maybe part of Brain Coon's goal is to try to get Sukuna to make a pact with Yuji, unbeknown to them that that's already happened. So maybe that's why Mahito isn't killing Yuji, because he wants Sukuna to make the pact with him, and he wants Yuji to give Sukuna control. They're trying to break Yuji's spirit so badly that Yuji goes, you know what? Take it, Sukuna. Just do whatever you want. Or he'll try to kill himself. Because again, Sukuna taking over Yuji's body is a win for Mahito and them, because it's going to cause a bunch of chaos and probably kill humanity. Or if Yuji manages to kill Sukuna and himself, well, that's a win too, because they're like, oh, the King of Curses isn't going to get in our way. Haha, who can stop us now? So, it kind of benefits them to keep Yuji alive, or for Yuji to decide that he's going to be the one to die. So, this monologue that Mahito gives to Yuji is amazing. It's an amazing monologue. I want to go through it. His monologue and the Todo's monologue, I want to go through them because they are fantastic. The voice actor for Mahito, oh my god, incredible. His voice like just getting higher and higher and higher and crazier. I know Mahito's voice actor has done a numerous amount of roles, but for him to have that range and to just be so like just screaming, like his voice getting raspy from yelling so much, it was fantastic. He says, I bet you just thought this would be some pest extermination. Let's start there. So he's like, the expectation that this was just going to be a pest extermination. Now, we'll say, so Mahito is saying you all underestimated me and thought that I was just going to be some bug that you crushed. I would argue, I don't think that's the case. I think that all the sorcerers knew walking into this that Mahito was one of the strongest curses they were going to have to face. And that's the one they were preparing for the most. So, I will say that we'll do expectation versus reality. I think that we'll have Mahito's expectation there and Yuji's thing. But Yuji was fearful. He was fearful of Mahito. So I think we have this verse thing. So that's quite wrong, actually. Mahito's like, you just thought this was going to be some easy extermination. And I'm like, no, they were actually quite worried about you. They actually thought you were the biggest threat there, outside of possibly, you know, Hanami or whatever that they had to face. And then, or like defeating evil spirits in a legend. Now that part, that may have been true, right? Get my wig, what's happening? No, doesn't matter with the makeup now. So he said it was like a pest extermination or defeating, or like legends of defeating evil spirits. Now that part is a little bit more close to home, but it's basically under the assumption that you're treating this like evil spirits and legends don't seem to have a lot of cunning or prowess or modern military strategy and things like that. So he's like, you just thought this would be like a fairy tale, right? And then, just throwing it around and saying, or something like that when you came here, right? But that's not necessarily true. And he's like, you're naive, you damn brat. And he's like, this is war, right? And that's kind of the thing too. He says, this is war. And he describes it as, it's not a fight to correct a mistake. So we'll put that on here. Not to correct a mistake. We're going to talk about that here in a second. I want to get that other line. He says, it's a clash of what we believe is right. It is a clash of our flimsy ideas of justice. So it's a clash of our ideas of justice. Of what we believe is right or wrong. Roll credits. Right or wrong, part 3. Right? And he stands over Yuji. He says, you are me, Yuji Itadori. You are me and I am you. I love, he says, just as I kill people without a second thought, you save people without a second thought. So it's like kill versus save. Kill versus save without thought. Ta-da! Okay. It's our instincts versus the dignity gained by human reasoning. So instincts versus the dignity of human reasoning. Okay, we're going to talk about that too here in just a second. I want to get the rest of this monologue before we go through this. A war to determine which will be left standing a century from now. So basically, who stands 100 years from now? This is like the most eloquent and the most like put together a monologue has been by Mahito, which is fascinating because it's suggesting that Mahito, of course, we've known Mahito's been evolving over time. He's a curse that keeps evolving. He's like a child. He's gone from being like a little brat in season 1 that was just kind of doing whatever he wanted to be gaining these like philosophical ideals. And this is all happening rather quickly for Mahito as well, which is concerning, right? That he's growing this fast, this quickly. And then we see the pile of bones from the humans that Dagon ate all corralled there. And then we see the remains of Hanami against the subway wall, right? And he says, if you haven't realized that yet, then how are you supposed to beat me? if you haven't realized this is a war, then what's going on here? And then he says, oh, Yuji, hey, have you counted how many curses you've killed? Me neither. And he's like, I bet not, but me neither. Yeah. He's like, I don't care how many humans I've killed. And then he's like, eventually I'll forget all about you too. And so then he's suggesting that he won't remember. He won't remember Yuji. And I think that's it. I think that's all the monologue before Todo steps in and gets him. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we have this idea of saying that this is war. This is not correcting mistakes. This is not just proving, it is proving who's right, proving who is right, and their form of justice over curses. Yeah, it's the kill versus save without thought. I do like that because Mahito had brought up a few episodes ago, he's like, we're the same, you and I. And it was like, I was thinking more along like the tinfoil hat theories of, oh, is Yuji part curse? Is he not? And dealing with that whole thing with Choso. But here Mahito reveals it's on a fundamental level. He's basically Mahito getting to the idea of being like, you are just like me. You're not counting how many curses you kill. I'm not counting how many people I kill. You try to save people without even thinking about who they are or what they've done. And I'm just killing people without thinking of who they are and what they've done. So, which is funny though, because save versus kill, there's a little bit of a difference there, but it's that idea of acting without thinking. It's just part of your instinct. But what's fascinating here is Mahito is saying that what I'm doing is just instinctual. Like violence is instinct and saving is a construct that's, that has been brought forth by the dignity of human reasoning. And you can argue that, right? I mean, Mahito, I'm sure, believes they are being profound and saying all these profound thoughts. And there is some truth that I agree with in what Mahito's saying, like the idea that this is just a clash of two people's ideas of justice. Jogo was kind of on the same wavelength, saying that they believed that curses should be the next humanity. They believed that curses should rule the world and not humanity. That's just a clash of ideologies. It's like that. But I do think that Mahito is not totally correct, right? I think that you could argue some of the things that they're saying. He's like, this is about who will stand 100 years from now. But the thing that I think I disagree the most with Mahito, because there is some truth, perhaps you could argue with what he's saying, but the thing I disagree with is when he says, he's like, I won't even remember you and who you were after this, right? Versus the concept that Yuji remembers. And the whole point of this episode, when he thinks back to Nanami's words and Nobara, is he's like, I'm going to remember those people I tried to save. You're not going to remember those people that you were killing. You'll never remember any of them, probably. I'm going to remember the people that I save. Right? But Yuji goes through this motion, right? And, of course, that we talk about, that's when Todo walks up. I want to get to Yuji's comment later on, but then we have Todo. The bells of the Gaion Monastery in India. And just walks in like big energy, swinging them heavy steps, like the necklace swinging from side to side, echo with the warning that all things are impermanent. The blossoms of the solid trees teach us through their hues that what flourishes must fade. I love this poetry. It almost sounds like it's in a way strengthening his attack, strengthening his technique. It's kind of like what Naobito was doing with explaining his technique. It seems like it's basically what Todo is doing, right? But this idea from Todo, we'll put him on here, about what flourishes must fade. Todo is fascinating because what's so fun about Todo is that back in season 1, he comes across as this big himbo who you think is just all brawn. But Todo is not only smart, I mean, he has a genius level IQ if you didn't know. He's not only a genius, but he's like, Todo's a total package. I'm not attracted to Todo's character at all in this, but he is kind of a total package. He's got the brawn, he's got the brains, he's a poet, he has his own fan fiction in his head, he's such a great fanboy, right? We should aspire to be Todo. But yeah, it's just kind of this idea that, you know, everything, not all the, you know, not all the glitters is gold, and not everything, you know, not everything will stay gold in the end, right? I feel like Todo would read The Outsiders, right? And so then he says, however, I love it. Him just like with the jacket, we are the exception. And that's so interesting, where he's suggesting that yes, all that flourishes will fade, but jujutsu sorcerers will be constant. So Todo is interesting because he's kind of a very pragmatic, but he's like the poster boy for jujutsu society in the weirdest way. You wouldn't think Todo would be, but he's such a big proponent of the whole way that it's set up. And I feel like it's a nice kind of contrast to Gojo, because Gojo is very cynical about the whole jujutsu society and how it's set up. And I feel like Todo shows how you can go along with it and it's okay. So Todo feels like he's the Boy Scout of it, right? Right and Wrong Part 3. So let's get past OP. This OP came late in the day. So, okay, we see at Shibuya Station on the platform, like an hour earlier, where him and Nita show up. And this is, okay, he's like, these people, are they alive? Arata Nita. So Arata is the girl Nita's brother, I'm assuming, which is fun. He has like a little cat bell on his butler outfit. I'm like, what? Nita definitely got the fashion sense of the two. I mean, he's dapper, but also I think Nita's a little bit more perceptive than Arata. Arata's just like, how are they brothers? And I'm like, dude, read the room. Like, also Todo being an only child makes all the sense. And I say that in the best way possible, because Todo just, there's an air about him that's not very, it's not nurturing like a sibling would be, if that makes sense. Like, Megumi has an air about him that kind of reads sometimes as a sibling. Yeah, Nobara seems like an only child, which she is. I feel like Todo feels like an only child, which he is, apparently. But they just have an air about them, right? They just don't come across like a sibling. But I like, so we find out Geto's gone away with the prison realm. I don't know how to feel about that, because Mei was battling them the last time we saw them. So either Mei has lost, and we haven't seen it, it's been off screen, and Geto went back, got the prison realm and left, or he ran and has taken the prison realm and left, and what's Mei and Ui doing? So I'm a little concerned that we don't know what's going on. So that has me worried. Has me worried a little bit for Mei. I'm not gonna lie. But then Todo's like, okay, our goal has changed from fighting to reclaim Gojo. I like that. I like that Todo's like, look, we can't go find Gojo now. That's done. He's gone. We can't do anything about it. We might as well just change our goals. I like that. I like Todo's instantly like, here's what we need to do. We need to fight to save our allies and shave away as much of the enemy as we can. That's a pretty doable goal. And at this point, that's all you can do. So good for Todo for getting in there. And he's like, starting right now. And he's like, let's hurry. My brother is nearby. And Arata's like, wait, he has a brother? I thought he was an only child. And then here we are. Now, Todo can't really do anything to Mahito's soul, which is problematic. But Mahito recognizes him as the one that drove Hanami into a corner, which is interesting that he recognizes him. And so then, yeah, I like that Arata's like, look, I tried to save Nobara, but she's probably dead, so don't blame me if she is. I like that Arata is just like, literally, Arata is a human embodiment of the coffee cup that says, warning, this coffee is hot. I feel like Arata's like, look, I'm just telling you, I tried my best. She's probably dead. Don't get your hopes up. I tried. Don't blame me. Just doing my job. I can only do so much. And then when he heals Yuji, he's like, look, I can only heal your wounds to an extent. Please don't hurt yourself more. If you do, it's not on me. Thanks. Bye. He's just like a walking warning sign. He's like, I'm just telling you all that I know. So I'm sorry. And then he's like, see to my brother too. And so then Todo's like, our battle has just begun. And then Arata's like, oh God, this is kind of ominous. But then Yuji, he's like, I can't. And he starts to cry. He's like, I can't fight anymore. And you know what? I'm sure, I don't know what the reception is from the fandom to this moment. I'm very curious to know in the comments how people reacted to this. I think it's great. I think it's great because it exposes a lot about Yuji in this moment. That, you know, Yuji just saying, I can't do this. Like, he just lost Nanami and Nobara in the span of 15 minutes. Who would not be in Yuji's position? And it's not that Yuji's necessarily a coward, but he comes out and says, he's like, I can't fight anymore. And then he says, look, it wasn't just Nobara, it was Nanami too. And Arata's like, oh shit, crap, what do we do? And he's like, Sukuna killed so many. And he's like, so I have to save that many more people. That moment where he said that, I'm like, oh my God, that is like this self-harm angle to it. And in that moment, again, we've talked about Heaven Official's Blessing. I can't believe I'm relating Jujutsu Kaisen to Heaven Official's Blessing, but you should go watch that series too and read it. It's great. I've got reactions on the channel. Go find them. But in that series, the main character kind of has, in some regards, a sort of sense like Yuji that they have to save people. And it's like, one, you don't, but two, that mentality of you have to save people, and if you don't, then it's your fault and you need to suffer for it. That's not healthy, and it's not good, and it's something that's addressed in the series. But for Yuji, he's like, oh, well, he's like, Sukuna killed so many people, so I have to save that many more people. It's like, no, that's not how this works. There is no way you can do that and be responsible for making up what's been lost. That's not even possible. You could never do that in your lifetime, Yuji. Like, what are you thinking? But he's just so racked with guilt about what he's done and what he's caused, and losing Nanami and Nobara on top of it, it's just too much for him. And I don't blame him, right? Like, who wouldn't be in that situation and feel that way? And he's like, but I can't save people. I'm just a murderer. And what I thought was my conviction was just excuses. He's like, I thought I was making this conviction, but it was just an excuse for myself to make myself feel better. And he's like, it's not working. And he's like, I can't do what I wanted to promise people I could. And he's like, I can't keep these promises. What do I do? He's having all this survival guilt. He's like, I can't forgive myself anymore. And I like that Todo handles it really, really mature. And of course, Mahito's like, hey, I can't hear you. What's going on? Speak up. And then Todo's like, excuse me, sir, we are talking. I'm glad that Nita wasn't hit during all this. I'm glad Todo could switch out Nita, because Nita's not a healer, but he's like a band-aid. He's like just putting band-aids on everybody, being like, okay, we're gonna stop the bleeding, and then you guys figure it out from there. This is all I can do. So I'm glad that Mahito kind of gave up on Nita pretty early on. That's a good thing, because Nita seems like there's not much else to do with him and his character. And then Mahito is just getting off on all this. He's just excited that he's trying to figure out Todo's technique. Mahito is scary because not only does he not really feel sympathy for anything that he's done or feel sorry or remorse in any way, but meanwhile, while Yuji's having an existential crisis, Mahito is just like trying to figure out how Todo works so he can defeat him. So that's terrifying by and by. But Todo's saying, a man as great as you shouldn't let yourself grow so small. He's like, you should not be like that. Here's the thing. A lot of people, they're like, Romania, how do you know when it's just a ship or just a bromance? And I'm like, it's really hard. It's very nuanced. It takes a lot. It takes little subtle details. Yuji and Todo are not a romantic ship. They are the most they're platonic bro ship. There is no like romantic tension at all. It's just, I don't know how else to describe it, but I mean, if you ship Todo and Yuji, go for it. Good for you. I'm rooting for you. Awesome. Not going to judge. But for me, there's just some air about it that just feels like a bro ship, like just ultimate friendship. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact of him bringing him up like he does, the way that Todo acts around Yuji. It feels brotherly. It feels like a sibling bond. I don't know how else to describe it. But he's like, you are so great, Yuji. You should not be putting yourself down. Like, don't do that. And I love, he's like, we're jujutsu sorcerers. He's like, me, you, Nobara, Nanami. I love it goes to the weapons and they're covered in blood. He's like, we knew this job was dangerous when we walked into it. I love that Todo says, look, when you became a Jujutsu sorcerer, you accept the fine print. You accept that you could die in the line of duty, and you accept that there is a good high chance that people are going to die on your watch, and you can only do so much. But you're still trying to do good, right? You're still trying to combat a curse that is hurting others. He's like, our comrades that have died, they have not been truly defeated as long as we keep that in mind. As long as we keep their names with us, as long as we bring them into the battle with us, then they've not truly died. They're still with us after all this is over, right? And I love that. The moment we chose to be Jujutsu sorcerers, we're not bound by such karma. I love that. I love that Todo says that taking this responsibility and duty, it elevates you past the norm, right? He's saying, he's like, once you get to it's interesting because it's a different way of viewing justice in a way. It is kind of, I don't know if elitist is the right word, but it's interesting because he's saying, look, once you take on a role like this and you plunge yourself into the darkness to this extent, the rules change. The same terms don't apply. And that's interesting because, you know, I feel like a lot of times in stories like this, it is kind of we're all the same, humanity's all the same. And Todo's kind of saying like, no, it's different. If you plunge yourself into this situation where you're constantly swimming in the darkness, there's a little bit of gray area. It's not a black and white issue. And that's fascinating to me that Todo is willing to, you would think Todo would be a character that's a very black and white mentality, but he's like, no, there's shades of gray. And when you become a Jujutsu sorcerer, you kind of have to accept that. And it's like, all right, Todo. Okay, I'm here to see what you're putting down. All right. Attempting to find meaning in the deaths of the fallen can at times defile the memories of those we've lost. So yeah, it's like, I love that line too. We get the shot of Yuji from the OP in front of all the different lockers where the bodies are. I like Todo saying, like, if you focus too much on why people have died, you're taking away from their memories. You're taking away from, like, Nanami, if you try to find meaning in why he let himself die, that's taking away from the sacrifice he made. Like, that's taking away from the things he did to help get you further than him. So he's like, don't focus on that. You can't do that. You cannot understand what someone else is thinking, and you will tear yourself apart trying to do so. And it's really great. I love that speech that he gives him. And then he shucks up the coat. He's like, what have they entrusted you with? And I love that Yuji thinks, he's like, oh, Nanami said, I'm entrusting you to keep on being a Jujutsu sorcerer and move on. Keep moving forward. And Nobara's like, I'm entrusting you to know that I was okay and that you can be happy even if I'm not here. And Yuji goes, okay. And it's like this light like brings to light, this fluorescent light bulb shines on him. And he's like, and then Todo said, there's no need for you to find that answer now. But until you do find that answer, you can't stop moving forward. I love that. It's just, Todo's like, when all this is said and done, you can go soul search. When all this is said and done, you can reflect, you can think back, you can write a thesis, you can do research, whatever. But until then, you got to keep living. You got to keep moving forward. And then later on, you can figure that all out when it's time. But now's not the time. You got to make it to the next day. And it's like, I love that. I never thought that Todo and Mahito, of all people, would be giving these beautiful monologues. I'm like, what is this? And then Nita like fixes technique, like uses technique to like stop the blood. And then he's like, look, I tried to help Nobara. And I like that Nita's like, they don't look anything alike. Nita, bless you. Bless you. But then, yeah, he's like, look, I tried to fix her. I'm not saying it's a 0% possibility she's dead. I mean, there's a sliver. It's not much. I'm taking her with me. I could be carrying a corpse. I'm just saying, don't blame me if she dies. I love Nita. It's like, do not look into it. Do not blame me if people die. It's not my fault. I kind of love Nita. I love Arata. He's fun. He's a fun time. And then Yuji just has this little look on his face like, okay, well, she could be alive. And I'm like, she's not. But we'll go with it. We'll go with it. I'm like 99.9% sure she's not going to live. But it's cool that we think it's a possibility. It's good that Yuji has that sliver of hope That's nice. And then, of course, then we start the battle between Mahito and Todo as my dogs are growling. The animation takes some spins. Literally, Mahito becomes a Beyblade. I will say, I don't mind the animation in this episode, but I would be lying if all I could think about during this fight scene was how good the season 1 fight between Hanami and Yuji and Todo looked. This doesn't quite live up to that, but you know, I know all the controversy with the animators and Mappa and all that. Those animators can't help it. It is what it is, but I would be lying to y'all if I said I wasn't thinking about that during this, but it's okay. And then Mahito, though, just Mahito trying to use all these tricks and trades and trying to figure out how to touch Todo, because if he touches Todo, it's a problem. Todo probably would get killed. I do think that Mekamaru was smart in saying that Todo, I know the others don't like hearing it. I know that Momo and them were like, how dare Mekamaru talk about us and saying we're not strong enough to face Mahito. They're not. That's the problem, right? I know Mekamaru is like, look, I just want to keep you guys safe. Sorry about this. We'll talk about that conversation in a second. But I like that Mekamaru realized Todo has a way to get away. He can just clap on, clap off, and get out. And he has a way to escape with Yuji if he needs to. So I do appreciate that. And I think that honestly, of all the people to avoid Todo, of all the people to avoid Mahito, Todo has the best chance. So that's good. And so, but Mahito's trying to figure it out. And he's like, I can do it. I'll hit him for sure. I can adapt. I can feel myself close to reaching it. And it looks like Todo's like soul is like a little moth, right? He's like he's like, I'm close to, but he says, I'm close to reaching it. The true essence of my soul. Oh, so Mahito's like, I'm close to seeing the insides of my soul. Does that mean he's close to starting the domain expansion? Because we don't need that right now. It'd be great if we didn't have that. And then Yuji's like, I'm sorry, Nanami. I tried to use my sins as an excuse to run away. And I love that Yuji remembers Nanami the way he does. Like the way that Yuji remembers him is just him. Oh my God, this wig. The way he remembers him is with like the light shining on him and he looks normal. He's not like Harvey Dent. He looks so good. And that's how he remembers him. And he's like, he uses the black flash, of course. And then, oh, I love it. I love just seeing him blasted away. And then Yuji with Nanami, I'll make sure I take on your share of suffering too, Nanami. Which I'm sure Nanami didn't want him to do that. Nanami didn't want Yuji to take on suffering and didn't want to curse him. But Yuji's like, I'm going to take on your share of the load too, Nanami, and keep fighting for you. You may not have wanted me to do that, but I'm going to. It's so good. And then I love that. I'm like, Todo, you could have just pulled the shirt off, right? You could have just pulled the shirt off. Why'd you have to rip it? Why? I can't decide. A part of me, like, after this episode wanted to get a Miwa wig, but I feel it's too close to this. I feel like I just did a blue wig. Doing a Miwa wig on top of it, but I don't know if I can do Todo either, so I'm probably going to, like, debate back and forth of whether I do Todo or Miwa next week. It's a hard sell. I just don't know which one to do. We'll see, but I kind of don't want to do two blue wigs in a row. That seems a little bit redundant. So, yeah. And he's like, welcome back, brudda. I love Todo and Yuji working together. It's so much fun. And then we see Shibuya stations closed off. And at this point, Mekamaru's like, well, the matters are settled. Head back, Miwa. Don't go into the battlefield. Don't go into the fray. I love that the other students, Urahime and Kamo and Momo and Mai, they all let her like have her moment with Mekamaru, like a goodbye moment, and let her grieve. Like, because they all knew she liked him at this point. They knew that he liked her, and it's just sad and romantic and Shakespearean. And here I wondered where they were the whole time, and now we know that Mekamaru, his gift to his friends was, I'm not going to lead you all into danger. You guys, I'm going to keep safe. This whole scene with her is so beautifully done. And the way that she looks against the night sky, the way they animate her blue hair and it looks iridescent. They're like, why'd you send Todo and Nita? And he's like, well, there's a 99% chance that Todo won't die in Shibuya. He could still die, but there's a 99% chance he won't. And same with Nita, as long as he's with Todo. His technique would be useful too. And she's like, what about me? Did you think that I would die? Am I useless? Am I weak? And Makamaru's like, no. He's like, and Mekamaru's like, look, no offense to y'all. I'm not saying you're weak, but I knew how dangerous this was going to be. And it kind of says Mekamaru's like, well, Todo can go. He'll be fine. If he dies, whatever. But you guys, I took steps to make sure you were all on a mission away from here. She's like, why didn't you ask for help? Aren't we friends? And he's like, I'm the one who is weak. It's because we're friends that I didn't want. He's like, I couldn't even see the mistake through because I was weak. I love it. He's like, there. And then when he said there was this girl I loved, I'm like, you know who it is. She knows who it is. It's just like, you can't come out and say that you love her. But I guess that would be cursing her, wouldn't it? So instead you tell the story so that you're not directly cursing her with your death. Ah, man, Mekamaru. I'm like, the Mekamaru Miwa shipper in me loved this scene. And how he says he just wanted to protect her and this was his chance to do that. And now we have the OP where she's crying. Now we get that too. Even if that girl didn't want me. And she's like, you idiot, I did want you. Oh, I hate it. It's so sad and beautiful. And then she's like, don't say goodbye. And he's like, I want you to find happiness, whatever shape it takes. My wishes come true. I got to protect you. He's like, I want you to live and be happy. And I got to do the one thing that I wanted, and that was protect you. So. Oh my God. Just, it hurts. It hurts. I can make a reference to another anime, but I don't want to do a spoiler tag. So if you can guess what anime that I would refer Mekamaru and Miwa's relationship and how he was able to protect her at the very end of the story and before his death, and it worked out and was beautiful and romantic, in contrast to another story that did somewhat the same thing but didn't come off quite as romantic as this. You get brownie points if you can guess which one it is down below in the comments, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong in the comments if you can guess, right? But it hurts. And then she's by herself at the end, and she's like, Mekamaru. I wanted her to say his name, but no, instead she's just crying. And I like that there's all the girls and Kamo. Kamo's like, why was I left out? Why do I have to be here with all the ladies? Also, I'm realizing how many girls are at that school. A lot. It's just Kamo and Todo. Fascinating. But yeah, I feel so bad for them. I guess Arata's there too. And what Mekamaru did, he held us in awfully low regard. And it's like, no, he just didn't want you guys. I mean, Mekamaru's being pretty damn smart. I don't think any of them could have handled Mahito, if I'm being honest. I don't think any of them could. Nope. You have to be a physical fighter with a technique like Todo to get away from Mahito. And even then, you can't hurt Mahito. So what do? You literally have to be something. Basically, Todo is perfect to fight Mahito and Yuji in this case, because Todo is strong enough to resist Mahito's attacks. He also is powerful enough to land a hit on Mahito to at least get him away from them. But then he's like an assist to Yuji that can help Yuji more than anything. And I don't think anybody else in that crew could do that. And so Mekamaru was like, I just don't want y'all to die, so I don't know why y'all are mad at me. And so then, like, Mahito goes on this, like, power structure thing where he's talking about how, like, Todo has most of his soul left and Yuji's down to 10% of his soul, which is understandable, but, like, what do we do then? Like, what happens if Yuji gets down to 0? Is that when Choso's going to show up? Because I'm sure in the next 3 episodes, Choso's coming back. I'm 99% sure that Choso's going to show back before the end of this season. Otherwise, it's going to be real awkward when I cosplay as him for the finale, but oh well. And then, yeah, he's like, I'm down to 40%. Like, Mahito being like Shigaraki from My Hero Academia and doing like power scaling is bizarre, like it's a video game or something. When they were down here when they were down here, and I'm going to take a picture of this screenshot because it's ridiculous. When they were down here in the part of the station that like is just lit by the moonlight, I really thought he was going to activate his domain expansion, but that is not what ends up happening, right? And I think that Mahito wants to get Yuji down to 0 to get him out of the picture and to knock him out, but we're not at that point yet. I also like how he says, he insults Nobara and says she's a nobody. And I'm like, how dare you, sir, saying she's a nobody. But then he says she left her damn mark behind. It's like the closest thing that Mahito is going to get to respecting someone. So I'll take it. Him just saying he respected Nobara. Fine. That works, I guess. But then, yeah, the two of them, the weird choo-choo train, as it was like, it felt like Labyrinth, like the cleaners. It felt so weird. And now that Mahito has killed 2 people by touching them and also turned 2 people into weapons just by walking past them, now Mahito is like a walking sense of dread, because anytime he gets close to Todo, I'm like, please leave Todo alone. Please don't attack Todo. What are you doing? Please stop. It's so frustrating, right? Very frustrating. And so then, yeah, when he went up the elevator, again, Mahito is so terrifying, because he's terrifying because there's this sense of you don't know what he's going to do. He's killed 2 main characters so far, so he can kill anybody and get away with it. And when he has the high ground, it's like you're just walking into a trap he could lay. And he's not dumb. He's learning and getting better at fighting, so it's terrifying, right? And then Todo goes to this, like, rainbow, like, just, you've grown strong, brother, but I must catch up to you. Like, just him, like, flying through the air, and there's, like, cosmic rays and energy. I'm like, and then his, like, idol girl is, like, cheering him on. I thought for a second Todo was going to die in that moment, because he was, like, I thought Gege was going to give us a bait and switch to make us think that Todo was having this big dramatic power-up, and then Mahito's just going to bam in and kill him. That's what I thought was going to happen, and I'm glad it didn't, but I was thinking it was going to, and it was freaking me out a little bit. And he's like, let me catch up to you, brother. And then does the black flash. Like, just the most insane, twisted thing. And Mahito's like, well, it doesn't matter what your attack does. You still can't land a hit on me. And then they both are like, I love we have Yuji, like, getting ready to battle. We have Mahito, like, and then you have Todo being like, smooch. It's like, it's wonderful, and I love it. It's so classy. I love it. Classic Gege. And then, yeah, they're all fighting with 120% of their power. And Mahito throws up all of the transfigured humans, uses them. And then it just, everything crashes through the roof of Shibuya. And yeah, the hot dog fingers, all that. The Hydra coming out. And he's like, let's kick it up a notch, Itadori. This will be the last time. The last time that you and I curse each other. So, the big question is, will this be the last time they curse each other? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I don't know what next episode has in store. Because now the fight with Itadori and Yuji and Todo and Mahito have gone above ground. When he says this is the last time that we curse each other, he makes it sound like this is going to be our final destination, our final fight. I don't know. And maybe this is the last time they curse each other. And by that I mean Yuji might do something aside from cursing Mahito. Maybe. I don't know. I don't see Mahito dying this season because Mahito seems like one of the main villains. I don't see Mahito dying. I don't really see Todo dying, if I'm honest. I think Todo and Arata will get away. But will Yuji fight Mahito after this? I don't know. It felt very shonen-esque. I think the most that the series has felt in a few episodes, with the power scaling and Mahito being like, this is our final battle, Yuji. And I'm like, is it your final battle? It feels almost like Gege mocking the shonen protagonist and antagonist, being like, this is our ultimate battle, and they're going to fight like 2 arcs from now. I don't know. It doesn't feel like this is their final battle, so I don't know. But we only have 3 episodes left. So it could be. Do I think that that battle between Todo and Yuji and Mahito is going to last 3 episodes? No. But at this point, I don't know. The villains that we don't have accounted for. Brain Coons ran off with Gojo. We don't know where they are. Choso was having an existential crisis. We don't know where he is. And then Mahito. They're like the 3 villains we got left. And Uraume. Uraume may have gone to meet back up with Geto. I could feel Uraume going back to meet up with Geto. Maybe we'll see that next episode. Choso is who knows doing what. And then there's Mahito. So there's 4 main villains left. And then you have Yuji and Todo. Arata and Nobara went away. Megumi is with Shoko and Yaga and Ijichi. And then you have Panda and Kusakabe somewhere. You have where is that it? Is that it? Sasanime's dead? Maki and Albino. We don't know about them. So our protagonists are scattered all about, and there's a 3-way place that the 3 to 4-way place the villains could be. So with 3 episodes left, anything could happen. But this episode, it felt simultaneously like we covered ground, but yet we didn't at all. It felt like it was all just focusing on Todo arriving and giving Yuji the pep talk that he needed to keep going in this battle. But it felt like we didn't get very far in the exposition this episode. So I don't know how to feel about that going into the final episodes. I don't know. But that's what we're going to find out, right? So, yeah. But in any case, I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this reaction and discussion. Maybe I'll be Todo next week. Who knows? I have the final 2 episodes cosplays figured out, so we'll see. We'll see. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'm back next week with more Jujutsu Kaisen. Bye.